When Lordship has ended saying that the lawyers have a role to play as a social doctor. So we have started this magazine in August 2021. To tell you, when we started with about 28 pages. We were not sure whether we will be able to fill up all the 28 pages. We thought in the team, including Mr. Neglur, myself and Dr. Hegde, maybe 14 page ನಾವು ಬರೀಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೇನೋ 14 ಪೇಜ್ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಸಿಗ್ಬೋದೇನೋ ಅದರ ಕವರ್ ಪುಟ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿ ಸೇರಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು Today we have come to 40 pages. In fact, some issues it has been 48.
I was going to say for 2 reasons, but now I'll have to say for 3 reasons. The first is, of course, thank you very much for that very, very generous introduction. I must say that there are 2 very, very important recent introductions which I am very pleased about, and that is that the government of India has actually sanctioned a new outpatient department for NIMHANS after 40 long years. So that's something that we are very excited about, because I believe that will help us to serve people better. And in principle, there has been an agreement, as you would have seen in the press, for a polytrauma center in North Bangalore in Kalsanhalli. We hope that will also reach fruition. So I think those are 2 very, very exciting milestones, and it's always nice when institutions are supported not just to grow for themselves and for the people within them, but to serve humanity better. The second reason I'm a little bit overwhelmed is that I'm normally used to speaking to a group of doctors. You call them all social doctors. I've got to take a little panga with you on that, but nevertheless, so it's pretty difficult, and I think the only time one has to really speak to a group like this is when one is in the courtroom giving expert evidence, and I can tell you it's not a very comfortable situation. I'd much rather be talking to all of you in this forum. The third thing, and I think the most important reason, is that I'm here today perhaps not as the director of NIMHANS, but as the granddaughter of K.R. GOPIVALLABHA Iyengar. And to me, that possibly represents something much more important and much more close to my heart than any kind of professional achievement might do. I'm going to start off. You know, this afternoon we were just discussing about ChatGPT and artificial intelligence and so on. So curiously, I know, this was perhaps about 5 decades ago when my grandfather was actually, a judge in the Karnataka High Court. But I thought, let me just check what ChatGPT will say about my grandfather. Idle curiosity. I'm going to say a lot of personal things which ChatGPT doesn't know about, but perhaps after this recording will get incorporated in further ChatGPT descriptions. Nevertheless, I asked ChatGPT to present an ode to my grandfather. So ChatGPT went, and after listening to this, you'll realize that it's a fair description of what you said about my grandfather. And of course, I'll tell you a little bit more. So it says, ode to K.R. GOPIVALLABHA Iyengar, O stalwart of the law, whose wisdom stood like granite firm through storm and flood, justice shone through your noble mind, a beacon clear, composed, refined. In Karnataka's proud and hallowed hall, your voice rang true with duty's call, not swayed by power, nor pride, nor plea, but tempered strong by equity. Upon the bench you carved your name in letters fair, not sought for fame, but for the cause of truth alone you judged with grace as right was shown. With language crisp and reason deep, you stirred the soul, made tyrants weep. The common man found strength anew in verdicts wise, in justice true. You held the scales with even hand, a scholar firm, a leader grand. Every ruling bore the stamp of thought. In every line the law was taught. Now in the quiet of retired days, of course no longer retired, but perhaps in another place, still echo sounds of silent praise as we heard today. For legacy is not in stone, but in the justice you have shown. May younger minds in robes to be recall your path and walk as free. O GOPIVALLABHA, noble name, the court you served their lasting flame. By the way, You can also get a very good Kannada Anuvada of this. I'm not going to bore you with the Kannada part of it. But I think what I thought was, I mean, it's amazing how things can be put together, and many of the characteristics that you described are perhaps, endowed in this. But let me now kind of transition to a much more personal, kind of image of my grandfather. And I think one of the things that we have at home is that several other people have followed in his footsteps. K.G. Raghavan for one. We have my cousins, both Goda and Radha, who have also become lawyers, and perhaps several others as well. Her in-laws are lawyers who are here with us today. So we are completely underpowered as far as doctors are concerned. And one of the strongest fights we have is the few doctors with the overwhelming and loud lawyers. I like to think that we win the battle because we are the real doctors. They are what you call the social doctors. Nevertheless, I think, but the most important thing I believe is that some of the values that my grandfather stood for. You mentioned, of course, integrity and etiquette, which undoubtedly is something that I would associate with my grandfather. But the idea of keeping, your values being grounded, being fair, being equitable, being kind, being generous, being firm and on the side of the truth are all the values that possibly all of us have inculcated over time. In the introduction, they mentioned that silence was one of the weapons that you used. My grandfather also used silence most effectively. All he had to do was not say anything, and you would be sure, you would wonder what you did wrong and correct yourself immediately. So amazing kind of use of silence. But as a judge, I was all of 2 years old when he became a judge in the Karnataka High Court. So clearly I do not have any real images of what he was like in the courtroom, except perhaps going and picking him up in the car that used to bring him home at times. But my outstanding memory of my grandfather was my having to recite "Ate a Peanut" in front of all the brother judges who came home. You could be sure if I was visiting my grandfather and somebody came home, he would call me, and I, all of 4 or 5 years old, would stand up there and recite "Ate a Peanut." I don't know how many of you know that song, which was very popular, which was a nursery rhyme that was very popular. But that's what I remember doing. I know it feels a little bit like a performing monkey now, but I'm sure I kind of enjoyed the kind of attention that I got. And then he resided in a place which had judges all around. There was Justice Sadashivaya, and we used to go to his house a lot. There was Justice Chandrasekhar, we used to visit their family a lot. There was also Justice Somnath Iyer, and we used to see them a lot. So actually moving around in the company of these very, grand looking people, even though we didn't hear them in the courtroom, was in itself, I think, a fantastic part of growing up. And of course, my grandfather was also a very handsome man. So that's another thing perhaps that also, kind of got my attention. But most importantly, the time he gave for his family is, I think, something that all of us must, as professionals, understand that it's so important to find a work-life balance, even for the most busiest persons. And I say that, these are all my recollections of many, many years ago, but he always found time. Even if he was busy in his chamber, he would come out when people came, greet them, spend time with them, inquire about them. I've heard a lot about his generosity in helping family members who were not very well off. And I think that's again a greatness that is something that we've all come to admire. So otherwise also immaculately dressed, sagacious, extremely fluent in what he would deliver in his speeches. I've listened to a few speeches of his as well, and that's something again to remember very well. The other thing I remember very much are the trips outside. And often you couldn't take trips that easily. In those days, 50 odd years ago, it wasn't easy to do those trips. But he would take the trouble of making sure whichever of us was free would go with him. So I remember very, very vividly, for example, a trip to Mysore, where there were some family friends, a person who worked, a senior person in the railways. And so, when you have memories, it's not just memories of trips. What I remember from that trip is ragi malt. Ragi malt was a drink I had never been exposed to. And the fact that trip is associated with ragi malt, a taste that I acquired at that time. So a lot of memories, taste, smells, touch, tactile kind of things are all associated with, times then. The other thing that was mentioned was the, road accident in Yelvigi when he had to go as an investigator for that particular thing. We managed a family trip at that time. He went on his own, but we managed to go by car. And in fact, recently, I think it was near Bijapur. It's a little bit away from Bijapur. When I saw the sign Yelvigi, these memories came flooding back. And what did we do there? Nothing much. We stayed in some, rest house, and then we ate. Again, my first impression was soppin kadle. I don't know how many of you eat soppin kadle, but my memory, I had not seen it in Bangalore at all. And for the first time, near Yelvigi, we actually ate soppin kadle, and that again is a most joyful memory. There are many memories like that. I believe once they left me behind and went on this grand trip, I think it was Davangere or something, not very far away. But then I promptly fell sick because my mother was accompanying the entourage, and as a result, they had to come hurrying back, cutting their trip short. So I've done important things like that as well, making sure that they can't have a great, good time with me. So, and we have some fantastic photographs. That it was only J.J. Welling at that time, as Kumar, I think you would know. It was down MG Road, J.J. Welling. And the most wonderful pictures of their swearing-in ceremony, all the brother judges standing in line, fantastic black and white photographs that, for generations to come, whenever you look at it, it brings back wonderful memories of what they all were at that time. And that was very well preserved in our families. My mother preserved them very well. And finally, I just want to say, that Justice talked about, the importance of liberty as well as restraint. I think liberty and restraint are things that are relevant not just to the press, but to every one of us. I worked in the area of human rights with the National Human Rights Commission, where we talk of the rights of persons with mental disorders, rights of patients coming to hospitals. Even there, I believe the rights must always be embellished with responsibility, understood with responsibility. And as we move in a country where we look at making sure that even the most vulnerable individual can exercise their rights, understanding that as citizens we have a huge responsibility in taking the country forward, is something that I just wanted to say. So, to end, I just wanted to say that whatever is the culture of tradition and responsibility, we all kind of possibly develop in our early years. So the models and the kind of transformative things, you mentioned your father and how his attitude to life kind of, stayed with you for a long time. Similarly, I think these kind of role models that we see, particularly very close to us, can be impactful and can change us for life. So for those of all of you who are young in this audience, the few people here, I think you don't know the kind of impact that you can make on people. So the way you conduct yourself, the way you speak, the way you dress, the way you kind of interact with people is going to make a huge impact. And I think that's something we need on future generations. They don't have to be your grandchildren. It could be the entire citizenry that you can impact. So I think we all need to take care on the way we handle ourselves and be role models for other children and for society at large. Thank you very much, KGR, for having me. KRG and KGR are almost kind of synonymous with each other. So thank you very much. And thanks to all the family members who are here. There's only one doctor, as I mentioned, but there are many lawyers and other professionals. Thank you very much for it.
But it took only 20 minutes. 22 minutes. I stand corrected, sir. That's the precision. Somebody said, he's precise, he remembers the timing, and he's time conscious. And that's what, all the lawyers and the judges must bear in mind. What this program sheet says is, I am given 8 minutes.
Lawyers, it doesn't apply lawyers.
I think it must apply more to lawyers than anybody else. Because we will talk endlessly. And it's time that, we contain our, this thing. I remember, I was in the US Supreme Court in 1990. I went to the Supreme Court, sat there. Arguments were going on. I think, the lawyer was allotted 10 minutes. 10 minutes was over, there was a red light. He was halfway through the sentence, he sat down. I think this culture, I think, we must adopt as lawyers. Well, after a very scintillating lecture from Justice Aravind Kumar, whatever I say will be insipid. I want to say only this. Today, everybody is on iPhone or iPad. Social media has taken over us. What do we see? It is only gossip and nothing else. It is these kinds of lectures which will energize us, which will make us think. In fact, I would say Justice Aravind Kumar has given us a food for thought. And these kinds of lectures, and I am grateful to Mr. K.R. Raghavan, my dear friend, because he says this endowment lecture will be there every year. The youngsters, to scintillate them, to make them think, this kind of lectures are extremely important, because we have today stopped thinking. We only go into the net, we look at it, we find something and we think that is what it is. We have stopped thinking. I think these kinds of lectures with such scintillating lectures given by Justice Aravind Kumar, we will start thinking, and I am grateful to Mr. Raghavan for creating this endowment lecture. Well, coming to the press and media, I can only say an apocryphal story. It is said that Pope, one of the popes, in 80s, very benevolent Pope, very kind-hearted. He was so concerned about the underdogs, the downtrodden, the marginalized. He went to New York. When he landed in New York, there was a lecture series. All the press people came, All the press people came and they started asking questions. One of the pressmen asked him, Pope, you are known for your sympathy and empathy for the marginalized, for the downtrodden. Are you going to visit the red light district in New York? And Pope asked, where is the red light district? Next day's headline said, Pope asked, where is red light district in New York? Now, this kind of a slant which we see in the newspapers today was there earlier also, but today it is more. So, as Justice Aravind Kumar said, responsibility. As he said, there is freedom of speech with responsibility. That is absolutely essential. If you see the papers, you will find on one side a slant towards right, another side slant towards left. Where is the center? And press is not just paper press or the print media. It is also the TV channels. And today you have a clear cleavage. There is nothing like a center, nothing like people who think. It's always shouting in the TV, and press again a slant. I think it is time that, after all, what is press? Press today, those of you who are...
52 years back, a time when litigation was tough, the typewriters were loud, the briefs were anything but brief. From those earlier days, he distinguished himself not just through an encyclopedic command of law, but through a rare
You all know the story, no? Where Nehru put a garland to a lady and she became his wife. So since then, only ladies are called.
With the permission of the President, ನಾನು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿಗೆ ಬಂದಮೇಲೆ ಬಹುಶಃ ನಂದೊಬ್ಬಂದಂತಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ಲರದ್ದು ಹೀಗೆ ಆಗತ್ತೆ ಅನಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊನೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷಲ್ಲಿ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದು ಮುಟ್ಟುತ್ತೆ. ಭಾರತ ಜನನಿಯ ತನುಜಾತೆ, ಜಯ ಹೇ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಮಾತೆ. ಹಿರಿಯರೇ, ವೇದಿಕೆಯ ಮೇಲಿನ ಗಣ್ಯರೇ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೆರೆದಿರುವ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಹನೀಯರೇ, ಪುಣ್ಯವಿದು ಜನ್ಮ ಜನ್ಮದ ಪುಣ್ಯವಿದು. 50 ವರ್ಷ ಹಿಂದೆ ಜಗತ್ತು ಹೇಗಿತ್ತು, 100 ವರ್ಷ ಹಿಂದೆ ಜಗತ್ತು ಹೇಗಿತ್ತು, 500 ವರ್ಷ ಹಿಂದೆ ಜಗತ್ತು ಹೇಗಿತ್ತು ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಅದು ಹೀಗೆ ಇತ್ತು ಅನ್ನುವ ಅನುಭವ ನಮಗೆ ದಕ್ಕಲ್ಲ. ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಇದ್ದಂತೆ, ರಾಮ ಇದ್ದಂತೆ, ಅರ್ಜುನ ಇದ್ದಂತೆ, ಕೌರವ ಇದ್ದಂತೆ, ಯುದ್ಧ ಆಯ್ತಂತೆ. ಬಹಳ ತಮಾಷೆ ವಿಷಯ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಶಾಂತಿ ಸ್ಥಾಪನೆಗಾಗಿ ಯುದ್ಧ ನಡೆಯುತ್ತಲೇ ಬಂದಿದೆ, ಶಾಂತಿ ಸ್ಥಾಪನೆಗಾಗಿ ಯುದ್ಧ ನಡೆಯುತ್ತಲೇ ಇರುತ್ತದೆ. ಮನುಷ್ಯರ ರಕ್ತಕ್ಕೆ ಆಸೆ ಪಟ್ಟಷ್ಟು ಬಹುಶಃ ಬೇರೆ ಯಾವುದಕ್ಕೂ ಆಸೆ ಪಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ. ಅದು ನಮ್ಮ ಇತಿಹಾಸ. ನಾವಿವತ್ತಿಲ್ಲಿ ಸೇರಿರೋ ಎಷ್ಟು ಪುಣ್ಯಾತ್ಮರು ಅಂದರೆ, ನಾನು ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ಆಮಂತ್ರಣ ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ಒಬ್ಬ ಹಿರಿಯ ವಕೀಲ ಮಿತ್ರರಿಗೆ ಕೊಡಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದಾಗ, ನೀವೇನ್ರಿ ನೀವು ಸಿರ್ಸಿ ಕಡೆ ಹೆಗಡೆ ಇರಲ್ವಾ, ಈ ಗೋಪಿ ವಲ್ಲಭ ಅಯ್ಯಂಗಾರ್ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಅವರ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕುಟುಂಬಸ್ಥರ? ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ನಾನು ವಕೀಲರ ಜಾತಿಯವನು. ಸೊ ಅವರು ಈ ವಕಾಲತ್ತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸ್ಥಾನವನ್ನು ಅಲಂಕರಿಸಿದವರು, ಅದು ನಮ್ಮ ಸಂಬಂಧ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದೆ. ಹಾಗ ಅಂತಂದು. ಹಿರಿಯರ ಜೀವನ ನಮಗೆ ಜೀವನ ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿಯನ್ನು ನೀಡುತ್ತೆ. ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಅಲ್ಲ, ನಾವು ಹೀಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಬದುಕನ್ನು ರೂಪಿಸಿಕೊಳ್ಳಬಹುದು ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಕಲ್ಪನೆಗೆ ಭರವಸೆ ಕೊಡುತ್ತೆ. ನಾಳೆ ಎನ್ನುವುದು ಭರವಸೆ, ನಿನ್ನೆ ಅನ್ನುವುದು ನೆನಪು, ಎರಡರ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೀವನ ನಡೀತಾನೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ.